the narration, and this is a better view of him. He's got the headphones on, so he can be doing this while the rest of the class is doing something else. They could be doing math. Matter of fact, my administration didn't really approve of all this, so we kind of did it on the sly. Some kids came in and worked on this during lunchtime before school. So he could be narrating one of the his sentence, you know, over and over and over, and then somebody else would come up and do theirs. And meanwhile, there are other students. This is a young girl working on Charlotte's Web, and she made a spider web that said "some pig" with yarn, and then she moved the spider around the web, and we'll show you how you did that. We had a webcam set up on a gooseneck, so the boy on the bottom there in the dark shirt, he's moving the pieces of paper around, and the boy on the right in the blue shirt is hitting the space bar. Every time he hits the space bar, it takes a picture. If he happens to accidentally take a picture of the boy's hand, he just hits delete, and he moves the paper, takes a picture, moves it, takes a picture, and he does this, you know, over and over and over. And so you can see the pictures on the computer, and you might take about 10 pictures for just a few seconds of animation. So there's a scene from of a Ferris wheel in Charlotte's Web, and that Ferris wheel actually turned. So not everybody had a job. So if you weren't a good reader, maybe you'd be a good artist and you'd be an illustrator, but maybe all you do is hit the space bar and take the picture. Now this young man, he was the director in a green screen video. He's got his hat and his scarf, and he's just got his megaphone, and his only job was to say, "Quiet on the set, action." And this young man's job was to say, "Take one." So everybody, depending on their skill level, had a job. This young lady is holding a cue card for one of the green screen videos. So we had cameramen, actors, animators, illustrators, and it was really important at the end to show in the credits, to show their names. So at the end of this, I'm going to show you one of their videos. At the end, you'll see all the animators, illustrators, narrators, and you have to spell their name. You can't leave it out. They get very upset. So we did, over the years, we had over 100 videos, but this is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I picked the music, and the kids did the rest.
Hagrid brings baby Harry to the Dursleys on a motorcycle.
Baby, you got the cutest little baby.
Hagrid brings Harry a cake on his 11th birthday. He gives Dudley a pigtail.
It's your birthday.
The Soy Hat puts Harry in Gryffindor.
I'm just wild about Harry, and Harry's wild about me.
Harry learns how to fly on a broomstick.
Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can.
Harry, Ron, and Hermione meet Fluffy the three-headed dog.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Harry and Ron save Hermione from Ultron.
You've got the magic touch.
Hagrid hatches a dragon egg.
The magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in.
Harry finally finds the Sorcerer's Stone.
This magic moment.
Yeah, you can see that, that was a long time ago. That was 7 years ago. Forgot how long ago that was. Now, we also did green screen productions. I want to show you one of the borrowers. If you're familiar with that, the borrowers lived under the floor. They're little people, they're only a few inches tall. And if you're missing a stamp or you're missing a pin, they may have borrowed the stamp to use that as a painting on their wall, a spool of thread as a table. So they just borrow things, but they have to hide. They come out at night, but they are people. So this is a green screen. And this was really tricky to figure out how to do this, where you have life-size people and little people. So this is the borrowers.
They laugh at me, these fellas, just because I am small.
The borrowers live under the floor. One day, Uncle Andretti was seen when he sneezed.
Too close for comfort, please.
Have you ever met a boy who offered to take the letter to the other borrowers?
Oh, little girl of mine.
Ariete put the letter under the rug.
Please read the letter. I nailed it to your door.
The boy gave her a letter from her uncle.
Deliver the letter, the sooner the better. Wait a minute.
The boy opens the door with a screwdriver. The Clark family ran for their lives.
A whole new world.
Mrs. Drivers noticed that things are missing. She gets up at midnight. She sees the borrowers and jumps on a chair.
The boy tries to move the borrowers to a safe place.
They laugh at me, these fellas, just because I am small. They laugh at me because I'm not 100 feet tall. I tell them there's a lot to learn down here on the ground. The world is big, but little people turn it around. A worm can rob a stone, a bee can sting a bear, a fly can fly around with cycles, flies don't care. A sparrow in a hat can make a happy home. A flea can bite the bottom of the boat in Rome.
Well, that was 8 years ago. I have to tell you, that was difficult to line up when you saw the one boy handing the girl the letter, and you shoot those separately. You shoot the boy, and then you shoot the girl, and then you just kind of the way you would expand a picture or with your fingers on an iPad or something. You can do the same thing with the video. And we just made her small and him large, and then tried to line it up so that the hands went together when they passed off the letter. But at the end of the year, I would give each student, I would burn DVDs. So every one of those students has a DVD with all the movies that we made each year. And then every year I tried to read different books so that, we'd have a collection of Roald Dahl videos and all the Harry Potter and Dr. Seuss and Kate DiCamillo. So they would get a DVD, and some of those students now, this is 10 years later, so they're graduating high school, they still have those DVDs and they watch them. So to summarize, we read the book, we make a flow chart,
Bob.
make a script.
Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt. You have only 5 minutes left, all right? Sorry for the interruption.
5 minutes, according to this, I said it's three minutes. Okay, And so then we finish, we make a movie. We watch the movie to see if we did Harry Potter. We would watch the Harry Potter movie to compare it to our own. And then we would eat, for example, with Harry Potter, we might have magic potions. And we would make like an ice cream float with jelly beans in it. And so we would celebrate with food, with a movie, make a movie, read the book, and then get a DVD at the end of the year showing all the movies. So my main goal is to encourage a love of reading. So they don't think of it as work. They think, even though they're improving their reading skills, their presentation skills, following directions, figuring out problems like how to do the green screen, how to animate certain things to make a three-headed dog, how do you make his head move? So there's a lot of learning going on there that nobody's really aware of because it's so much fun. So I say thank you, so you know I'm done.
All right. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Bob. Right. That is a very interesting, inspiring presentation, I believe. Yeah, it shows that students, even like 7 or 8 years old students, right? They can do so
Right.
much. I wish my students were that enthusiastic about reading and books like your students. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Then I would, I guess you can, stop sharing your screen. Yeah, thank you one more time, Bob, for your presentation. And now I would like to introduce you, the participants, to the second speaker of the day, Ms. Norita Ali. Ms. Norita Ali is the head of Department for English Language, Literature, and Elements of Business Skills at Meridian Secondary School, Singapore. She holds an MA in Social Studies from Nanyang Technological University and has shared what she has learned from classroom inquiry and research project with fellow teachers in Singapore. Right, Norita, I hope you are ready.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
All right.
Okay, I'll
Yes,
share my
loud
screen
and clear.
first.
Sure. You
Okay.
have 20 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, the floor is yours. Okay.
Okay. I'll begin. Firstly, good morning, everyone. Greetings from Singapore. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here. And I would also like to give my thanks to Dr. Willie for giving me the opportunity to speak today. So thank you, Dr. Willie. It's really an honor to be able to share about my school's extensive reading program and what we have done to make the most out of books with all of you today. So let me begin. So today, as you can see from the slide, I'll be sharing with you on Project Meridian Reads, which basically is the journey that my school has embarked on since 2017 to make reading meaningful and magical for our students. Okay, the overview of my presentation is as follows. I will share briefly background information about my school. I will also touch on why and how extensive reading ER is implemented in Meridian Secondary, what we have learned from this project, the success stories and the challenges, and what we as a school plan to do to strengthen the school's reading program. So here's some brief profile information regarding my school. Meridian Secondary is a co-ed government school that operates on a single session. Our school's vision is to nurture to develop joyful learners, creative thinkers, and compassionate leaders. And we do so through our mission to nurture in Meridians inquiring minds and caring hearts for the pursuit of excellence. Our school motto is unite to reach new heights in everything that we do, including reading. The school is 4 years old this year, but it has a very long and rich history as it was formed from the merger of two schools And because of the merger, we have harnessed the best programs from both schools and created new ones, including our extensive reading program, which I'll be sharing with you today. Before implementation of the extensive reading program, the approach to reading in Meridian Secondary School was intensive. And when I say intensive, it basically involved the use of text to equip students with specific reading skills and strategies. So basically, it was all about reading worksheets, comprehension worksheets. So due to the amount of concentration and thinking this approach required, students often did not get to experience the element of joy while reading. Earlier on, I mentioned that the reading in Meridian was very intensive in approach. But despite the number of worksheets that we've given to our students, we realized that they are not meeting our expectations in terms of their ability to acquire specific reading, writing, or speaking skills. So we did some surveys and we found out that our students, in terms of their reading patterns, they were less likely to read for fun and engage in conversations about what they have read with the peers. And the loan rates and the school library visitorship at that point of time was really low. All right. So this led us to review the school's reading program to inculcate the habit of reading, which I think all of you would know that it is an approach which involves reading as many books as possible. So Okay, so as we explored extensive reading, we did quite a number of readings through books and research papers, and we realized that to fully exploit the potential of extensive reading, our teachers need a good understanding of its principles and characteristics. As a head of department in Meridian Secondary School, I decided to plan a professional learning program for my teachers on extensive reading. And this program was facilitated by a master teacher from the English Language Institute of Singapore. And the whole purpose was to help the teachers understand the what, why, and how of extensive reading. What you can see below are 3 questions which my teachers and I constantly discussed and talked about as we went through the extensive reading program with the master teacher. I'm very lucky to have a group of motivated teachers with me who saw value in embarking on this extensive reading journey, because they too saw that extensive reading can provide a positive experience for students and produce positive motivation for reading. And the next 7 points that you see on the slides are basically the key indicators of an extensive reading program, which we use and follow very closely as a guide in our planning of the extensive reading program. The image that I've included in this slide will show you that the professional learning program that we have conducted for our teachers was really intensive. It involved 6 modules. It also involved the planning of a mock extensive reading program where we tried it for about 3 weeks before we further reviewed the program. So 2017 was all about raising our awareness. Let me switch on. Sorry, the battery is running out. So sorry about that.
No problem, Ibu.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, 2017 was all about raising our awareness of extensive reading. So 2018, to examine how extensive reading strategies can lead to an increase in students' reading interest and the amount of books they read, we embarked on a research project and we received guidance from Dr. Willie, who is the principal lecturer at NIE. So our research project basically examines our attempt to build a reading culture through ER and considers how insights from reading and library data can inform the teachers to frame their reading instruction in responsive ways. Specifically, the project sought to answer the following 2 questions about whether or not access to classroom and school libraries would improve students' reading interest, as well as whether or not the freedom to choose book would sustain the students' reading interests. So as part of this research project, we carried out several surveys, pre-surveys for our students. Basically, it was to find out their personal areas of interest and to ascertain the state of reading for pleasure among them. We also conducted pre-surveys for teachers to understand their perception of students' reading habits and abilities. And the reason why we embark on this research project, why we carry out all these surveys, is because all the data from the surveys would inform the design of the extensive reading program and activities for our students, and to ensure that the objectives were realistic and purposeful. So what I'm sharing with you now are some data from our survey findings. Basically, our students are great fans of fantasy horror books, and they are also keen fans of comic books, manga, and so on. As for non-fiction books, a majority of them preferred to read books on sports. What you see here, basically, a large majority of the students, about 62% of them, mentioned that they would like to have more access to books in the classroom. And a majority of the students also mentioned that they would like to read books that their teacher suggests or their friends suggest. So from the survey findings, we also referred to the readings from the PLP program and from some other books. We learned that access to classroom and school libraries and enriching the print environment will result in more reading. One of the readings that we have read also reported that students who did more voluntary reading when the books in the classroom would do more voluntary reading when the books within their reach in the classroom. So what we did was to use the research fund from the research project to equip each class. We started off with the secondary one, the youngest batch of students, because we wanted to see a better progression of the impact of the extensive reading program on them over the years. So we equip each class with one classroom library, and we also purchase books for them, but we were not able to purchase many books, and we relied on the students to donate pre-loved books for the classroom library. We also received great support from our school leaders who agreed to let us have an additional 35 minutes on top of the time meant for our English language lessons. So as you can see in the picture, during that 35 minutes, the students basically did sustained reading. They didn't do any worksheets. They basically had the choice to pick any books they want, and together with the teacher, they will do sustained reading for a full 35 minutes every 2 weeks. Earlier on, I mentioned that my students have a keen interest on comics. Our readings also showed us that comics could serve as a conduit to move readers to a level where they could read and understand more demanding text. One research paper also suggested that comic book readers did as much reading as non-comic book readers and had positive attitudes towards reading. So with the increasing popularity of comics, in particular graphic novels like manga, we propose that our teachers allow our students to read comics should they choose to. And why I mentioned the word allow our students, because at that point of time, although not all, I was aware that I have a group of teachers who are quite unwilling to let the students read comic books. They would have the tendency to say, okay, don't read this book. Maybe you should read books on conservation instead, on the environment instead. So with this awareness, we strongly encourage our teachers to allow the students to read comics should they choose to. All right. During this research project, we were also introduced to this amazing book by Donalyn Miller, The Book Whisperer by Dr. Willie. So thank you, Dr. Willie, for introducing this book to us, because we really were able to see how extensive reading is being implemented from the perspective of another teacher. And in that book, Miller mentioned that by allowing and encouraging students to read what they want, teachers are endorsing students' reading interests. And since we have conducted a survey, we know what our students' interests are. We agreed as a department that we should, as far as possible, give our approval to our students to read books of their choice, no matter what books the students have chosen. As students wanted more books recommended by teachers and their friends. And several studies have also shown that teachers need to be role models and lead in the discussion of reading for students to benefit. We decided that reading aloud or storytelling will be a regular and key component of the book sharing by teachers in the classroom. All right, so this was our library in 2017 to 2018. Okay, so before we did the revamp of some of the activities, we also included some changes to our physical changes to our library, so to make it more conducive for our students. So some of the reading activities introduced in 2018 was monthly thematic displays to suit the students' reading interests. All right, since we knew that our students like manga, horror stories, and all that, we catered to their interests and we had book displays for them. Other engaging library activities included golden ticket, movie screenings, blind date with a book. We even had an activity called Meridian Book Fairy, where the students have to go around looking for clues that we've planted all over the schools to be able to have access to the book of their choice. All right. These are our activities, school-wide activities at a glance. Okay, now I would like to share with you this data that we have gathered from 2017 to 2018. So as you can see, we experienced this amazing growth in terms of the number of books that were borrowed by our students from 2017 to 2018. So this seemed to suggest that what we were doing kind of worked for our students in terms of motivating them to read. Right. We also conducted post-survey for our with our students because we wanted to find out whether there was a need for us to further fine-tune our extensive reading program. And we received more than 200 suggestions from our students. And some of the suggestions indicate that they wanted more books that they like. Some of our students wrote, choose books for teenagers, because at the end of the day, it was still the teachers choosing the books for the students. So they felt that our choice was still not based on what they like. They asked us to buy more interesting books because they mentioned that some of the books are boring. Because earlier on, I mentioned that the books were donated, pre-loved books donated by the students. So it could be that those books did not really cater to their interests. Our students also requested for light reading materials. They wanted more magazines in the library, like teenage magazines. Yeah, so this was some of the suggestions that they have given us. So what worked for us in 2018 was basically the engaging reading activities, right, allowed reading to be seen as fun. The students had more access to books and the library visitorship improved, as you have seen from the data. But what needs more work was that access to book was not enough to sustain the students' interest. You saw their suggestions just now, right? The selection of books in the library did not match their interests, and those affected remained uninterested in reading. So we told ourselves that we should consider getting students to be directly involved in the selection and purchase of books for classroom and school libraries. Because previously, it would be the teachers going to the Kinokuniya bookstore to do the selection of books. So with this survey results, we decided, okay, why not we bring our students with us and we do shopping together when, at Kinokuniya. All right. Although students' choice of what they read should be a norm in ER, the data revealed that the students were not reading enough of their favorite materials. Although we do have them in the library, we do know that some teachers still did not encourage or allow the comic books to be circulated because perception is difficult to change, right? So we continued to speak to our teachers to strongly encourage them to change their mindset about comic reading, as their personal expectations and belief will have an effect on the students' reading interest and the motivation to read. And
Norita,
yes.
again, I'm sorry to interrupt. 5 more minutes.
Sure, thank you. So as you can see, although the teachers were aware of the basic ingredients of ER, the students' responses suggested that we need to continuously revisit the ideas of ER with our teachers. We also did a more physical revamp of the library to match with the changes that we have implemented for the extensive reading program. We restructured the reading plan for the reading program. We included more school-wide activities, library activities, and in-class reading activities. So from this, we move to this, and we zone out the sections in the library to suit the students' profile. And this is how our library look like now. All right. We included more comic books for our students. And what we saw was that the students really started using the library. All right. And they were really engaged when they were doing their reading. So our teachers basically were observing the students quietly and taking photos and sharing with the department teachers. So we were really heartened to see the students reading and being engaged in the library. We also got the students more involved by caring because they got involved in sharing time, which is held every Fridays. So this was a main draw for our students. There were also more monthly thematic displays and more interesting book face competitions, for instance, activities that would cater to their interests. We also believe strongly in publicity and advertising of our activities. So we set up a Meridian Secondary Library Instagram account apart from our main school Instagram account to document and publicize the monthly themes and activities of students. And the students really love the posts or the updates that we have put up on this Instagram account. So you may check it out later after this sharing. Okay, what I'm going to show you now are the loan transaction over the years. As you can see, the numbers speaks for itself. We have seen an amazing growth from 2017, 2018, 2019. You might be asking what happened to 2020. Okay, so because of the COVID-19 situation, we were only able to gather data for January and February because we had the circuit breaker period from April to May, and it was a pre-circuit breaker period in March where we had to abide to the safe distancing measures. But as you can see, even in 2020, January and February, there was still an amazing growth in terms of the borrowing rate in the library. Soon our word spread, and we began to receive quite a number of requests from various schools to share our Project Meridian with them on the challenges and as well as the success stories. We also did quite a number of sharing externally. For instance, last year we did a sharing at Reading Symposium held by the curriculum organization in Singapore and NLB, which is our National Library Board. What I would like to share with you is that during circuit breaker, the reading never stopped. We continued to make the most out of books, and the students even volunteered to do book trailers and share about reading via our school's Instagram account. And post-circuit breaker measures were put in place to ensure that reading still does continue until today. So moving forward, we will continue to gather and review data and fine-tune our program based on the data that we receive from our students, from our teachers. We also would like to align the curriculum content to the activities of the extensive reading program. And we are looking into increasing the number of series books, which we believe would help our low progress students. We would also like to get the buy-in of more teachers from other departments. So it's not just the effort of one department, but the effort of the entire school. Yeah, so basically that's the end of my presentation. I hope what I've shared with you have given you a glimpse of how our school have done our best to make the most out of books. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Narita. I think your presentation is wonderful. I believe strongly that reading culture it should be developed, right? And we as teachers, I think that's one of our jobs, right? And which is very hard, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Narita. All right, yeah. Again, I would like to remind the participants that you can write down the questions for the presenters in the chat room, and the Q&A sessions will begin after the third speaker of the day. Now, the first speaker is Miss Triana Patiwail, or more familiarly known as Ibu Arin. Right, and I will begin to read your CV, Ibu Arin. Right, Ibu Arin is a lecturer at the English Literature Department at Krida Wacana Christian University, Jakarta. She earned her master's degree in Humanities from English Language Studies Department, Sanata Dharma University, Yogyakarta. Her fields of interest are critical literacy, culture in language teaching and learning, literacy instruction, and computer-mediated discourse. Regarding literacy programs, Ibu Arin started the journey by being involved in the Global Literacy for Professional Development Network project sponsored by the International Literacy Association from 2010 until 2015. As a master trainer, she trained teachers to integrate literacy into their teaching in this project. The experience then is a driving force for her to take a more active role in literacy program. Currently, she initiates and runs Read to Lead program, a collaborative literacy program with students in which quality reading experiences are designed and brought to different groups of communities. She is also part of the Indonesian Extensive Reading Association. All right, Ibu Arin, you have 20 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Hianli. I hope that my voice is quite clear.
Clear, Ibu.
All right, okay. So let me share my screen first. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank the Faculty of Language and Culture in Universitas Kristen Maranatha Bandung, and also to fellow colleagues in IERA for giving me the opportunity to share in our webinar this morning. What I would like to share this morning is potential brought together by extensive reading. I observed that so far the discussion and also the sharing has circulated much in relation to how extensive reading contribute to students' language competence and proficiency. But I also see another potential of it, that is through extensive reading activities, actually we can also work to nurture empathy and emotion self-regulation of our students as the readers. All right, so what do we have on the menu list today for my session? First of all, we will have a look at why empathy and self-regulation, emotion self-regulation anyway. And then how reading stories extensively contributes to empathy and emotion self-regulation. And then I will share some possible extensive reading post activities to explore, and then what to keep in mind when you bring this format of activities in your classroom or when you work with your students. Okay, so why empathy and self-regulation? I would like to begin by quoting Daniel Goleman. So Daniel Goleman is the figure behind the concept of, or the theory of emotional intelligence. So back in 1998, he already asserted that in contemporary society, for different reasons, children and teenagers are becoming more and more isolated, nervous, bored, stressed, and hot-tempered. Some of them are also getting aggressive and stubborn. That back in 1998. And if we observe our surrounding situation nowadays, yes, we have a large group of well-grown children and teenagers, but we also have another group who struggles to grow their ability to empathize, to negotiate, to cooperate, and often they cannot feel optimistic and hopeful about the future, especially in COVID-19 era at the moment. Students came and say, I better drop the courses, or I even better drop the university. We also observe that there is an increase of violent and abusive behaviors. Teenagers get involved in drug use and so on and so forth. So there is a call for us as teachers to respond to this. Then I have this question. what can ER activities I have with my students address to this issue? What can we do as a reading group to respond to this issue? Okay, so when we read stories, we mostly focus on this. So we experience linguistic encounter. We meet words, we meet phrases, expressions, vocabularies, we construct meaning in order to understand what we read. But it is not only linguistic encounter when we read stories. There is also cultural encounter. Behind the stories or reading materials that we read, there is tradition, ways of life, practices, habits, and so on and so forth. And to my observation, it is not only a linguistic encounter and cultural encounter that we experience when we read stories. There is also emotional encounter. I strongly believe that every readers, as they read, they experience, a roller coaster a feeling, right? Like when you feel what your characters feels. So obviously there is an emotional encounter there. We observe characters' feelings, emotional responses, tension, closures, and so on and so forth. So yes, reading stories extensively do promote language learning, and it also provide models for rich and natural language and variety of different registers. But what I would like to emphasize this morning is that it also presents opportunity to develop our students' personal and emotional intelligence. Now, speaking about emotional intelligence, there are numerous of definitions to explain what emotional intelligence is. But after extracting those definitions, I come to this conclusion. So emotional intelligence can be understood simply as individual capability of recognizing, understanding, managing, and effectively using emotions in order to self-develop and cooperate with other people to achieve shared goals. Goldman later defines emotional intelligence model into 5 basic competencies: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And due to time limitation, I will only touch self-awareness, self-regulation, and then empathy. Okay. Next question, how does the experience of reading stories extensively contribute to the nurture of empathy and then emotion self-regulation? Okay, let's start by the first component, self-understanding and self-awareness. So Goldman described self-understanding or self-awareness as the ability to know one's emotions, strengths, weaknesses, values, and goals, and then recognize the impacts on others while using feelings to guide the decisions. Now, when we work with stories, what will happen? Stories express a wide range of human emotion clearly. You can see and you can feel characters' thirst of love, disappointment, anger, excitement, pain, boredom, triumph, joy, and so on and so forth. So as our students extensively read stories, they also allow themselves to live the life of characters. Because if you really connect to the stories that you read, you will feel the life of the characters right from the beginning till the end of an event. They also witness characters' delicate changes of moods and emotion. It's like we watch movie, but in a slow motion movies. And at any time, this is the privilege of reading. You can press pause, and then you imagine, and then you feel it, and then you press it, and then you continue. So by reading extensively, especially stories, we allow our students to recognize different sets of emotion, both positive and negative, and also observe how certain emotion can be utilized further to be their strengths or be anticipated because of the weaknesses that it might bring. The second one is emotions self-regulating. Self-regulating by Coleman is defined as the ability to control and redirect one's disruptive emotions and impulses and adapting to changing circumstances. Now, when it comes to reading stories, what happens is that stories provide the model for our students to, one, observe how certain characters deal with and address their disruptive emotions positively or negatively. And also the students have the chance to observe how characters' emotion self-regulation affect people around them and the quality of relationship. Then empathy. Empathy is characterized as the ability to consider other people's feelings, especially when we make decisions. What happens when our students read stories extensively? They have an extensive opportunity to observe how characters relate and interact one to another. They also have a chance to take a side on certain characters and feel or experience and share the feelings. And what seems to be more important is that the students put themselves in different contexts so that they can understand and sympathize with the characters and then with people in reality. Now, I just want to bring us a little bit back to the characteristic of ER that I find strongly support this. We have 10 characteristics of ER, but I find this 5 that is closely related to this format. So students read as much as possible. This is important because in order to relate to this format of activity, they need a repertoire of emotions and feelings of the character. And of course, it can also be achieved through the variety of materials in a wide range of topics. And this is what I find really critical, that in extensive reading, reading materials are within the linguistic competence of the students in terms of grammar and vocabulary. Now, we want our students later to be part of the follow-up activity. If they still have a problem in understanding what the stories are about, then that can be hindrance. So if they find the reading pieces are easy to understand and they can take pleasure in reading those stories, then the next following up activity can be much more easier for us to do. Okay, I would like later, after this, share about some possible ER post activities to explore with this format. The first one is, I call it brain and heart surgery. So the aim is to help our students to recognize different sets of emotion. And I adapted from Goshen, 1999. Okay. So within this activity, we help the student to read the feelings of the character, So we ask them what can they observe? What can they examine in relation to body language of the characters? Because the convey of feelings closely related to body language, and stories can be a very rich context for the students to pick up this information. And then we can also ask them to express through body language any emotion that they feel. And we can also ask them to share about the feelings of the character that are not explicitly mentioned in the story, but shown in the illustration. The second activity is a feeling hunter. So after reading stories extensively, We can ask them to identify words or in relation to sets of emotion. Now, this can be used to reinforce vocabularies that later they will need to express their feelings in real situation. Then we can also ask them to set up what's so-called positive language dictionary. So we can have the students to find in the stories they read examples of positive expressions that demonstrate caring, empathy, tolerance, cooperation, and so on and so forth. And we can ask them to record all these expressions in what's called positive language dictionary. This can be very helpful in the next activity, but also for sure in real life interaction. So instead of addressing people negatively, they practice using a positive language expression. And then the last one is what's so-called express it in a better way, please. So the idea of this activity actually is that we transform the communication. We can ask the student to select excerpts where characters across the stories that they have read so far experience conflict, disagreements, or sadness. And then we can ask them to revise or change the dialogue so it reflects more positive or pro-social communication, and then have them write in dialogues to that effect. They can use positive language dictionary in the previous activity. So the aim is that the students benefit from practicing expressions that reflect caring, empathy, willingness to share, and cooperate. Okay, what to keep in mind when we work with this format of activity? So when we tap into extensive emotional experience as the result of reading stories extensively, number one is pay attention that always make space for dialogue, having a conversation. Allow the student to have self-dialogue first, and then put them in the dialogue with the characters in the story, and later put them in the dialogue with their friends and also with the teachers. And number two is the aspect of reflection. Reflection is,
sorry.
Yes.
To interrupt, you only have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
All
I'm
right.
closer to the end. Okay. So reflection is very critical because through reflection, the students start to notice and acknowledge different sets of emotions and feelings, positive, negatives, how to express themselves in a positive way, in a better way. And this is part of building the awareness. So every time they want to express themselves emotionally, they think, they consider, they access their previous experiences. And then it takes time and consistency. So reading stories does provide opportunity for the student to experience rich emotional experiences, to develop readiness for empathy, but it takes some time to work on it. Just make sure that we put it into a consistent program. I understand that as teachers, we hold the decision to decide, okay, this time I will address vocabulary, this time I will address emotional intelligence, next time I will address cultural issues, and so on and so forth. So consistency. Okay, I would like to end my presentation by or sharing by showing these two quotations. So reading is an exercise in empathy. Why is that? Because it's an exercise in walking in someone else's shoes for a while. Lately, I spent days, so at least 1 hour after all the activities. So usually at night, so I will take time to read novels. And I do I do experience walking in someone else's shoes. When they fall in love, I feel the feeling of love. When they are disappointed, I feel it too. So when they are treated badly by others, I also share the same feeling. So if the children, teenagers have limited opportunities to experience this in real life, then bring them to reading stories extensively. They will experience this. And Ursula Guin, she said, we read books to find out who we are, what other people, real or imaginary, do and think and feel. Is an essential guide to our understanding of what we ourselves are and may become. A friend told me that to know one, it takes two. So in order to understand who we are, we always need other people. If you cannot find in real life, go and read stories. Thank you so much. I give the screen back to you, Ibu.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Arin, for your presentation. All right. We will directly begin with the Q&A sessions, everyone. All right. Because I think we are running out of time. So I would like to read some of the questions, but I know that the time for the Q&A session is a bit short. So maybe I will just choose some some of the questions. And for the rest of the questions, perhaps Bob, Norita, and Ibu Arin, maybe you can answer directly in the chat room. But I will start with a question for Bob. Okay, the first one is, Bob, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, all right. There is a question. Can you suggest any activities like that you did with your students, only with with some older students? What do you suggest for them to do? Any suggestion from you?
What happened? Oops.
Bob, can you hear me?
No, I didn't hear you. It froze.
Oh, okay. I will repeat my question then. There is a question. There is a question from one of the participants about any. Do you have any suggestion for similar activities that you can do with older students?
I thought about that, and what I would do since almost everybody today has a smartphone, I would ask them to, you're talking about maybe high school, like 16, 17, 18-year-olds, even, middle school, 14, 15. After they read a book, they could do a book report, or they could act out, make their own movie, in a group, and then present it at a film festival. We could have a certain day when everybody presents their videos that they made, and then maybe have an award show where you present awards for the best screenplay, cinematography, best director, best actor, best actress, supporting actor, best set design. You can, make it a fun kind of a thing, and maybe convince other people. They say, you should read this book. Kind of maybe instead of doing a book thing, maybe make a movie trailer. Here's an exciting, the new James Bond movie, maybe it's a 60-second, it was a dark and stormy night, something like they always see in the theaters. I think the kids would be very, very creative, and they would have a lot of fun, and they'd be learning, and they probably wouldn't realize that they were learning, kind of a stealth learning. Hey, you tricked me. I didn't know this was going to be fun. I didn't know I was going to learn.
Okay. All right. And how long does it take for one project to finish from the very beginning until the end? Well, ballpark.
Depend, the book, see, the books, reading the book took a while. It could take several weeks because I was not reading books that were on their reading level. I was reading books that I thought they would be interested in. So I would pick out books that I would like to read. We did the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, The Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like I said, we did the Dr. Seuss books, but I read the books to them a chapter a day. So the actual making the movie wouldn't take that long. Now, somebody did ask about the music. I would go on YouTube and I would choose it, but I would put in keywords. And sometimes, if I didn't have a song that popped into my head, I would just say, something, Harry Potter's going to fly on a broomstick. So I might just put in fly and see what came up. And I got a bunch of songs.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would play the songs for them and say, okay, I've got 2 or 3 songs here. Which one do you think would be, we had Matilda. And if you know Matilda, she would go to the library, but she was only 5 years old. So I had Barbara Streisand singing, I'm 5, I'm a big girl now, I'm 5, my feet can hardly touch the floor, And, but it was only 3 or 4 seconds of music. It wasn't a lot of music. And each scene was only 4 or 5 seconds too. So the whole movie, if you had 10 scenes that were 5 seconds, that would be a 50-second movie with a couple of seconds of music. So the whole video could be like 90 seconds or 2 minutes. It was very short.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you, Bob, for your answer. And I think I will move on to the questions.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah? Sure, of course.
I put in the chat, I put in a PDF file that has links to all of the videos that my class made. So if they want to watch them. Now, there's a couple of them that are bad links, but 90% of them are working. They can get a good idea. They're like about 5 or 6 green screens and a whole bunch of, what they might want to do is show their students some of those videos as a motivator, and maybe they'll want to read the book, or maybe they want to make their own video.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Bob. Sure, thank you. And perhaps if you still have the time, maybe you can go to the chat room and answer all the other questions from the participants directly to them. Thank you, Bob. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to move on to questions for for Norita. Right. This is a question from our YouTube viewers. Do you have a good strategy to motivate students who dislike reading? Norita?
Okay, to answer that question, a good strategy to motivate students. That was exactly why we embarked on this research project, because our students were not reading. So there's no one good strategy, but one thing that I would like to really share with everyone is to get to know your students' reading interest, because that would really help in terms of moving the reading program forward. So that is why earlier I shared that we did numerous surveys with our students. We really wanted to get to know what their interests are, the profile of students that we have. So maybe you may want to consider doing that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, and I always tell my students to start small. Don't just start with reading some thick book, and you will give up directly, right? So just start with comics books. I agree, or the one which is simplified or whatever. Just start. Even Indonesian books is, I think, a good start. If you cannot really fully understand the English one. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I think there's another one for you, Narita. This one I will read. It is a struggle to bring up the idea of doing the ER to our students, because students have to do 16 until 18 subjects per week. which make them so occupied by a lot of different subjects every day. Do you have any suggestion or recommendation on how to align the idea of implementing ER into such a busy schedule situation?
That is exactly the kind of responses that we hear from our teachers and students as well in Singapore. There's a lot that they need to focus on. So the initial responses that we receive from students and teachers is that there's simply no time for reading. But like I shared earlier, we need to do a lot of buy-in. We need to do a lot of sharing and convincing the students that it would eventually lead to improvements in what they do in the classroom intensively, because they require the content knowledge, they require the vocabulary, they require the knowledge on various themes, which they could get from reading, which they could only get from reading. So there need to be clear communication with the teachers, with the students, so that they understand and see value why we have to we are doing what we're doing in terms of our extensive reading program.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Marita, thank you so much for your answer. And yeah, I noticed that there is a question for Ibu Arin, but I think Ibu Arin has already answered the questions in the chat room. Thank you so much, Ibu Arin. All right. Okay. All right. Now, yeah, again, if for all the other participants, I believe that Bob, Norita, and Warin are still available in this meeting. So if you still have any questions at all, just type your question in the chat room, and I think all the three speakers will be able to answer them directly in the chat room. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for Bob, Norita, and Ibu Arin. And yeah, I think, yeah, because of the very limited time, I will have to stop the question and answer session right now because we still have to make time for the two panelists of the day, which is Ibu Mariani and Ibu Silvani Komara. All right. So I think we can just continue with the first panelist of today, which is Ibu Mariani, and I'm going to read her CV. Right, Mariani is a full-time lecturer in the English department, Universitas Kristen Maranatha. So she is one of my colleagues, of course. She got her master degree from the linguistic department, Ohio University, United States of America. Her research interest is mostly in the field of applied linguistics areas. All right. So, Ibu Mariani, if you are ready.
Yes, thank you, Ibu Hyunli. Let me
Okay,
share
you
the
have 10
screen
minutes.
first.
Yes.
Could you all see my screen? Yes, okay. Good morning, everyone. Please allow me to share simple activities of extensive reading in my grammar class at Universitas Kristen Maranatha. Yeah, so this is the overview of my presentation. So I will share about how I know ER, my ER experiences, the ER implementation at grammar classes, and my students' opinion on the ER test that I gave them. Yeah, so the first time I heard about ER, the term extensive reading, is actually from Dr. Willy Renandia when he presented about ER entitled Dadok, the missing piece of the ELT puzzle in Taflin International Conference back in 2016. And he shared so many quotes, and one of my favorite is this one. The best way to improve language proficiency is to engage L2 students in extensive reading and viewing. So based on this presentation, I continued my interest of ER by joining a symposium back in 2018 from UKI, Jakarta. And you can see that there are three reputable speakers there, Dr. Rob Waring, Dr. Willy, and then also Ibu Yusefa. So from this symposium, I learned about graded readers at central.com, ercentral.com. This is the outlook of ercentral.com. So there are like two positions. You can be a student or you can be a teacher, and you can read or listen. And from this website, they provide hundreds of collection of ebooks. Okay, so back to my ER experiences. So I started love reading when I was in elementary school. So I started with picture books, mostly Enid Blyton's books. and then also Bobo magazine. And then I continued to reading comics like Donald Ducks, Tintin, and so on. And then in junior high school, I continue reading adventure novels like Lima Sekawan, Stop, Pasukan Mau Tahu. And then back in the university, because I took English department, I started to read English novels like Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, and so on. At first, I did not really interested, I wasn't really interested to read English novels because there are so many difficult vocabularies, and the lecturer at that time only gave us, you have to read this, you have to read that, without really asking us whether it's too difficult or not. But later on, I continued reading those books. Yeah, so this is the ER implementation at grammar classes. I've done this for 3 semesters. And in the beginning of the semester, I introduced these rules to my students. So there should be 14 weeks of 14 weeks of university meetings, but I only allocated 10 weeks for reading ER. Minimum, they have to choose like one ebook from ercentral.com. So they can choose whatever ebook they like, but they have to remember 5-finger rules. It means that if you find like more than 5 difficult vocabularies, then you have to let go the book. If it is too difficult, let it go. If it is too easy, you also have to let it go and find another more suitable book. Yeah, so at the end of the semester, so each students at least they have like minimum 10 ebooks. They can read more than that, but not less than that. So this is the reward that I promised them, that they will get 5 additional points for the total assignment score, which is like quite big. Yeah, why I did this with my students, because based on the theories that I have read in the articles. So if students are exposed with a language input that is from, can be reading or listening, they will expose not only with vocabularies, but they will be also exposed with grammatical patterns. And I do believe that their language intuition of that certain language will be developed. Yeah, so this is, again, back to ercentral.com. So if you can see like on the left side, there is level. So this website provides level 1 until level 20. And then there are different kinds of categories of the stories. So students are free to choose whichever ebook that they like. And this is one of the example of the ER test. I posted this test in Google Classroom. So they have to tell me what is the title of the ebook that they chose, what is the level. And then for this test, I gave the question, why did you choose this particular story? What do you like from the story? And they have to answer in about 50 until 100 words. So this question changes every week. Sometimes I ask them about the characters of the stories. I ask them about the moral lesson. How do you feel after reading the story or listening to the story? And then if you are the author, how will you change the ending of the story? So different kinds of questions every week. Yeah, this is one of the most common ebook that my students chose. The title is For Lisa, and it's level 8, and there are 991 words. And what I like about er.com is they have like quiz where the students can just try themselves related with their reading comprehension and so on. Yeah, so these are my students' opinion on the ER test. The reasons for keep on doing ER tests. Some students said that, oh, I love the stories. I like to learn about many things. So I know about photography, I know about the Chinese culture, and so on and so forth. Some students said, oh, my reading skill improved, so I can read more and more faster and so on. But most of students said, I like the 5 additional points, not because of the topics, not because of the skill, but I like the point. Yeah. So what are the benefits of ER tests? Most of them said that, oh, I know more, so it opened my mind. Some of them said that, oh, yes, it really increases my grammatical knowledge. I can know how to use this preposition. I can know when to use these tenses and so on. Yeah. Some of them also admitted that the reading skills improve, and the rest of the students said that, of course, my writing skills improve because I have to write about 50 until 100 words related with that ER ebooks that I have read. Yeah. This is one of the example from my students. This is meeting 1 ER. And if you can see here, the title is A New Sister. So this student chose level 7. The question is, why did you choose the story? At that time, she managed to write 75 words. And when I see this paragraph, I can notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grammatical mistakes. And let's compare this with ER meeting 9. So this is from the same student. So if we can see, the level increases from level 7 to level 8. And the question is, what lesson from the story that can be applied in your life? When we look at the question is also more challenging compared from the first ER test and the ninth ER test. And this student manages to write more from 75 words, now becomes 92 words. And when I check the grammatical mistakes, so there are only 3 grammatical mistakes. Yeah? So I can conclude that ER test really helps my students to get more grammatical knowledge, and then especially how to use it in the context. Though it will be more helpful and useful for the students if they will be given like 5 to 10 minutes slot of time in the class to discuss about what they have read. Yeah. So there are 2 reading quotes that I like. First is from Mason Cooley. Reading gives us some place to go when we have to stay where we are, especially in this pandemic era. It's difficult to go here and there. So just read a book or listen to ebooks. And then the second one is from Dr. Seuss. The more that you read, the more things you will know. And the more that you learn, the more places you will go. Yeah, thank you for listening to my presentation. I will give this back to Ibu Hyandri.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ibu Mariani. I think I owe you an apology because you worked so hard on the grammar classes to prepare the students to be ready for my novel class, right, Ibu Mariani? Okay. All right. Yeah, we almost come to the end of our discussion, but before that, of course, we have the last panelist of the day, Ibu Silvani Komara. Last but not least, Silvani Komara earned her master's degree in English Language and Linguistics from the University of Westminster, United Kingdom. In the past few years, she has been in charge of several reading courses at the English Department, Universitas Kristen Maranatha. Her interests include TESOL and discourse analysis. I think Ibu Silvani is ready. All right. Yeah.
All right.
You have 10 minutes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ibu Hyandri, for the introduction. And hello, everyone. I'm Silvani from Maranatha University. So I've got only 10 minutes to cover everything. So let's just get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. Right. Are you able to see my presentation now? Yes? Okay, great. So, right. So this is something practical, especially for those who are interested in implementing extensive reading. And I name my presentation Creative Assessment Projects in Extensive Reading Classes. And this presentation is largely based on my experience of teaching university students. So I guess most of the activities that I'll be talking about will be more suitable for higher level students, either university or secondary or even maybe adult learners. So we'll be looking at ways to assess extensive reading, and then also some project ideas that you can use to evaluate your students' performance. Right, so the first question is how to assess extensive reading. Well, I guess if you've decided to use extensive reading, then you may want to detach yourself from using the old traditional typical book reports, at least not too much of them, and also the usual reading comprehension quizzes and questions, which I think will probably make your students want to read less and less instead of more. So I guess it's a good idea to have less of these. And it's not like book reports and reading comprehension quizzes are not useful. That's not my point. But I guess we want to explore new things in extensive reading. So we want the activities to be engaging and fun and also interactive in some ways. So so I guess these kinds of creative activities will be worth considering, especially if you're interested in artistic expression and also critical thinking. Right, so based on my experience of teaching reading to university students last semester, this is what I did with my teaching partner. So in the beginning of the semester, we told the students that they have to read one book each week. So we gave them this folder which contains plenty of ebooks of all sorts of genres and reading levels. And the students have to pick one book to read for a week, and then they have to pick another book to read for another week. And also they have to make sure that they keep track of what they've been reading. And so if you do this, then by the end of the semester, your students should have read at least 10 books, or maybe more than that, maybe more than 12. So then what do you do at the end of the semester? For final exam, this is what I did. So I asked my students to pick 3 stories of all the stories they've read in one semester. They picked 3 that they like the most. So 3 stories that they find the most interesting. And then they have to come up with a new, original, and fresh story, which combines different elements of those 3 different stories. So for instance, if a student has read, let's say, Oliver Twist, and then Alibaba, for example, and White Death, which is a story about drugs, by the way. So the students may want to come up with a story about a Middle Eastern orphan who is involved in drug dealing or drug smuggling, or maybe addiction, something like that, but you get the idea. Right, so they come up with this story, and once they've come up with this new story, then they can start writing a summary. It doesn't have to be long, as long as the student have got something in their mind about the story. So they can write a summary of 10 to 15 sentences. And also they have to try to include some new words that they learned from their reading. Okay, once the summary is done, here comes the fun part. This is what I call creative project. So the students then have to choose one project to show their comprehension or their understanding. Right, so we gave them 3 options. So basically the idea is like this. Imagine that the new story that the students have made is so great and it's wonderful and it's really cool that it's going to be turned into a movie. And so they're in charge of promoting the movie or the story using different types of media. So what can they do? Well, we gave them some options. So they can create a storyboard or movie trailer, a short clip about the movie. And we also gave them some free online tools, just optional tools that they can use to do this assignment. Or second option, they can choose to create a movie poster. And the third option, they can create a CD cover, including the playlist, list of songs to be used as soundtracks in the movie. Okay, so these are the assessment criteria, which you can modify as you like according to your need. But I was looking for task completion and then quality of ideas and also creativity. So the attractiveness of the design and how appealing the output is, something like that. Okay. So now let's have a look at some of the examples of my students' works. I'll start with the instructional sheet and template that I use to guide my students to do this assignment. So I made this table. And I put this in the instructional sheet. So project A, B, C, and then you also put the tools that the students can use to do this assignment, and then the description of the instruction in detail, and then what the students need to complete. Okay, and this is part of the worksheet that the student needs to complete. So first of all, they have to state their sources of inspiration, so what books inspired them. And then they have to write a synopsis or a summary, which I told you about. And this is also part of the worksheet. This table, so I wanted my students to justify the choices that they made. So because I didn't want them to just make random choices in their assignments. So in this table, they have to say, for example, if they're doing a CD cover, they have to explain why they choose each particular song, right? And then they have to answer questions like, how does the song relate to the story or to the movie? And then also, what's its relevance, things like that. And same thing with this. If they choose a movie poster, then they have to pick several actors to play in their imaginary movie. And they have to say, for example, why Leonardo DiCaprio is suitable for this role. Okay, so this is an example of a movie poster that my students made. And most of my students chose movie poster, by the way, maybe because, I don't know, maybe because that seems easy, or maybe they love movies. Not sure, but this is one example. This is an example of CD cover, including the playlist. Yep. And also you can use this activity in your reading class. So last year I used this for final exam. So I asked my students to create infographics based on the books that they've read. So the first one is an infographic based on a fictional story. And the second example is an infographic which is based on a nonfiction book. So my student read this book about working out and exercise, and then she made this infographic, which I think is quite remarkable because it's very detailed and informative and colorful, and it's nice to look at. So I was quite happy with the result. And you can also ask your student to create a storyboard. You can go to storyboardthat.com and you can explore and experiment with that tool, and ask your students to also experiment with this platform. If you're still looking for other activities for your reading class, then you can Google. You can go to this site, writeshop.com, or you can just basically type alternative to book reports, and then Google will show you some things that you can do. Right, so I think that's all from me. I hope my presentation will be useful for you, and good luck for your reading classes. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Ibu Silvani. Very interesting. Very interesting presentation indeed. Thank you. Okay, everyone, I believe we have come to the end of our discussion today. I hope that all of the participants in this webinar learn new insights, new ideas from all the presentations delivered today. I learned that I think students can do so much more, and I believe all the presenters and the panelists today are great teachers who are enthusiastic and very helpful. Also, I believe that teachers have a very big role in encouraging students to read. So if you are teachers like me and all, I think most of us are teachers, I believe we can learn a lot today. I know for sure that I do. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for Bob Greenberg, for Norita Ali, Ibu Arin, Ibu Mariani, and Ibu Silvani. And I would like to return the floor to our MC of the day, Ibu Mariani. Thank you so much,
Thank you, Ibu
everyone.
Janli. Okay, let me share the screen first. I'm sure all of us have been waiting for this screen. Yeah, okay. So, can you see it? Yes? Okay. Yes, so this is the exit ticket. Yeah. Yeah, just wait a minute. Okay, I'm so sorry, just now my children are calling me. Okay, yeah. Okay, let's go back to this. So this is the exit ticket. You can get a screenshot of this exit ticket, the QR code or the link. And this link is available for 2 hours from now. So you can get the certificate. You can also fill in some surveys to give us some input so we can improve for the next webinar. Yeah, and the next webinar will be the next virtual talk number 13 will be in UIN Raden Intan Lampung, and it will be in September 19, 2020 at 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. Yeah, so before we close this talk, let us have a photo session.
I'm sorry, Ibu Mariani, but I think your mic is turned off.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So let me share the screen again, or have you got the exit ticket, or should I share the screen again?
We got it, so maybe we can move on to the photo session.
So yeah, let's start with the photo session. Yeah, so here in my screen there are several pages. Yeah, so all of you have turned on your video. Yes, okay, please give your best pose. Yeah. One, I will start with the first page. We have 5 pages, so please be patient. Yeah, page 1. 1, 2, 3, smile. Page 2. 1, 2, 3, smile. Page 3. 1, 2, 3, smile. Page 4. 1, 2, 3, smile. And the last page. 1, 2, 3, smile. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for your patience. Yeah, on behalf of Universitas Kristen Maranatha, thank you to all speakers, panelists, moderator, and especially to the committees. Thank you also to IERA in ERF, and see you in the next virtual talk. Have a nice weekend.